2024. Welcome to Reactivated, the 15-minute webisode where we dig into the depths of the Robot Wars archives. We start with a bit of a milestone today. We celebrate 700 subscribers to the channel. That is fantastic. Thank you all so much for keeping the channel alive and going, because you never know what's round the corner. But first, let's start with a bot bit. Can you identify who this famous robot is? The answer will be revealed a bit later on. Now we move on to a bit of a talking point. Well, how can we sum this up? This was an addition to Series 2. My hint and clue, JCB Digger. That's right. We're talking about the Sentinel. Now, this was at a moment in Robot Wars where the first series was a success. They wanted to build on that success. They introduced technically 2 new house robots, of course, Sir Killalot, and then the Sentinel. But not till Heat G. This was just over halfway through the series, and it was a static, we'll say a static house robot, basically patrolling on one of the lanes of the gauntlet. And what it would do as a robot came towards it, it would move its arm like a JCB Digger does. I've got a little bit of a comparison shot. You can see that it is definitely based on a JCB. They've just obviously modified it by painting it and putting some artificial wiring and a spike at the end to make it more menacing and more of a threat. And as the robots came towards this arm, moving pretty much across the whole path, so they couldn't really get through, the roboteers couldn't get through. This led to a lot of robots ending in the pits, breaking down. They just couldn't get past the Sentinel. And it was a threat. Dare I say it, better than Cassius Chrome that came later in Series 7. In terms of menace and annoyance, yes, I think so. It was the only house robots to be controlled by someone actually sitting in the pod, sitting in the driving seat, if you like. And then come the semi-final stages, the Sentinel then did a 360 right the way around, so we actually covered 2 lanes. I loved Series 2. I just think the Sentinel was a little too powerful for the robots of the time. It was essentially a massive JCB Digger versus a robot made of plastic quite a lot of the time. They just weren't powerful enough, and of course, as we all know, that most of the robots ended up in the pit or just not being able to get through this obstacle because it was there in the way. Then in the arena fights, it was still there. We didn't really see much of it when it went to the arena fights towards the end of each heat, but it was present in the arena. I'm very glad it only made the 1 appearance in Series 2. It was a very powerful piece of machinery, the Sentinel, and I think it was ahead of its time maybe. I think maybe we would have seen more of a benefit further down the line, but having said that, it was a JCB Digger, you know. It wasn't really inventive. I think probably I would have liked to have seen the Sentinel maybe a little bit further down the line in terms of the robots adapting, because they would have had more armour, more weaponry, more manoeuvrability to get past the Sentinel. I just think it came a bit too early. Let me know what you think. Was the Sentinel ahead of its time? Was it a good idea? Would you have liked to have seen it in another series? Please comment in the comments box below and let me know what you think. Now we look at a specific moment, a specific fight, something that happened pretty quickly, but it defined everything that came after it happened. A trend, it could be something that wowed us, something that we remember for years to come. And today we'll be looking at the first robot to be flipped out of the arena. Of course, this epic fight came in the grand final episode of Series 3, Chaos 2 against Firestorm. This was the fight that had them pitted against each other. It was the only time they actually ever fought, Firestorm and Chaos 2, even though they would again make several and many more appearances in the future wars. This was a defining moment for me. The fight was over pretty quickly. From Firestorm's point of view, quite underwhelming. But this is what happened. we can have a look here. Chaos 2 came in with the flip. Firestorm, not the best ground clearance here in the Third Wars. Chaos 2 took advantage of that, flipped it over, and of course Firestorm's self-righting arm was too slow, and Chaos 2 took advantage, and from a quote from George Francis saying all he was trying to do was bash it against the wall, he flipped. And the flip led to Firestorm being flipped completely out of the arena and onto the tracks. Of course, at the time, they weren't prepared for any robot being flipped out of the arena. So Derek Foxwell, one of the senior technical consultants at the time, was there after having a look, trying to see if there's anything left of the poor tracking. But since this fight aired, from then on in each series, at least once, quite a lot of it was Chaos 2 at the time, at least once a robot was flipped out of the arena. And this was all down to Chaos 2 flipping Firestorm in the grand final of Series 3. Yes, it was groundbreaking at the time. It was amazing to see. No one was expecting it. And even maybe Series 4, 5, robots were flipped out the arena. Again, really good to see. But as sort of the 6th, 7th wars came, and maybe even the reboots, 8, 9 and 10, for me I think too many robots were flipped out. I think certainly in Season 7, the fight, because the flippers were so powerful by this point, it was just boring to watch, and it ended quite a lot of the fights prematurely because one flip out the arena. So yes, I think it got a bit tiresome in the end, but it all came from that one fight, and Chaos 2 was the first robot to do it, and for me that is one of my milestones in the history books of Robot Wars. So now we have a look back at a merchandise that was available at the time of Robot Wars, at the peak, at the pinnacle, and this time it is these 3D glasses. That's right, they were actually available. It was a free 3D glass and poster combination with the 4th edition of the Robot Wars magazine, and it is actually a poster in the background here. It was of Sir Killalot, and it was a 3D image. So let's just see if it still works. And it does, it still works after all these years. That's right, this poster and these very high-tech 3D glasses were available in the 4th issue of the Robot Wars magazine. And yes, they still work after all these years. Nearly 20 years old, and Sir Killalot still as menacing as... That's far too close, thanks Sir Killalot. Just a quick recap of the 4th magazine. It had some interesting parts. One was an article about is Craig Charles a robot, which I actually took literally at the time. So it turns out he wasn't, obviously. And towards the end, there was the big ballot of the week, and this time it was which team is the funniest. So in at the top, it was Dietor at 28%. Followed closely by Plunderbird at 24, then the Chaos 2, third at 19. They weren't... The team were brilliant, obviously the robot was. I won't class them as a cool... Well, maybe after its performance in the 3rd series, and of course what we touched on before about flipping out the arena. That's probably what it's based on. But then in 4th place was Sir Chromalot at 17. I would have put Chromalot higher, followed by Mortis at 12. Mortis... What can I say about Mortis? Yes, they were cool. They always came with gimmicks and gadgets. So yeah, I'll agree with that. But that was, of course, all included in the 4th edition of the magazine. Now, before I take some of your questions, just like to say again, massive thanks for the 700 subscribers. You all make the channel what it is today. So I want to thank you so much for that. Please keep watching as well. And like I said before, you never know what's around the corner. I'm going to tie in one of these questions that's been asked many times, and when we uploaded the 1st series of Robot Wars quite recently, quite a number were asking what about the pilot episode. Well, to celebrate 700 subscribers, the pilot episode is now on the channel. It's actually on the playlist, the Series 1 playlist. So it's not actually a video, it's hidden, so you've got to go look for it. playlist, Series 1, and it's there, the pilot. So enjoy that. It's half an hour of... It's our first attempt, so you can imagine it's quite, as I say, dodgy. But, you know, it was our first attempt, and the graphics all over the place. I just got an editing kit, so I was playing around with all sorts. So yeah, check that out. And while we're on the topic of 700 subscribers, I've got a question here from William Warby, who was the 700th subscriber. Welcome to the channel, William. Hope you enjoy the content. His question is, what is the most destructive robot, in my opinion? Hands down, without any shadow of a doubt, Carbide. Obviously, its trail of destruction in the 8th, 9th and 10th war was just nothing short of cataclysmic, really. It is the only robot that has appeared in 3 consecutive last final fights. So it's either become first or second for 3 wars in a row. Not even Hypnodisc, Chaos 2 or Razor could match that brilliance. I would have liked to have seen Carbide fight one in the older series. I think Carbide would have been just unstoppable. Apart from obviously the wheels, that had a problem sometimes with the wheel shredding and an issue with the disc, like with the grand final of Series 8. But other than that, Carbide was really unstoppable. So for me, yes, obviously it got the disc design from Hypnodisc. We have to give credit to Hypnodisc for Carbide's dominance. But for me, Carbide is the most destructive robot in Robot Wars. Another question here from Hexbug Heroes. Thank you for your question. What is my favourite weapon type? Okay, yes. Again, just going off what we've discussed really from Carbide, it has to be the flywheel. When Hypnodisc, and again this is probably another fight we'll have to have a talk about, and another topic, another debate on a future episode, but when Hypnodisc had its first fight against Robogeddon, I certainly watched it thinking, what on earth is this weapon? How does it work? Of course there are 2 little prongs on the disc, which of course created the destruction it did cause. But for me, the flywheel, such an inventive weapon, hands down beats the flipper, spike, the axes. So thank you, Hexbook Heroes, for your comment. Flywheel is my answer. And while we're on the topic of flywheels, another question here from Steve Merskino. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. What was our Revolutionist, based on, and why did you love him so much? I like this question. Like I said, we were on the topic of flywheels. Hypnodisc, of course, was our inspiration for Revolutionist. We were waiting quite a while to get a toy that could have the impact that we saw on the TV. So Hypnodisc toy wasn't great, you know, in terms of destruction. So when the pit stop kits came and we've had this mechanism that we could put on Revolutionist, if we can spin it, of course it created so much damage, so we were probably just obsessed with the fact that it could do actual damage, which is why we loved it so much. Thank you for your question. We can quickly have a look at the bot bit. Any of you were lucky enough to guess? That's right, it was Apollo. Not many robots are white, so that was fairly easy, I think. I think that was a pretty easy bot bit this week. But that's all we've got time for. There is the cease. Once again, thank you so much for all of your questions. Not got through them all, I do apologise. Keep watching though, because you never know when your question will be answered. Keep subscribing, download. Please keep watching. I do this for you. I love doing this. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.